Jello, 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 Jello. We're going to continue on. This will be part 14 of Devil in the White City. Officially part 3 within the book. And we are moving along. We have a picture here of the Chicago Court of Honor, and it definitely is a white city. May to October of 1893 is when the photo is shown, so get a picture of the Court of Honor from May to October of 1893 out on Google, and you'll see exactly what I'm looking at. Let's go ahead and start the chapter with opening day. 23 gleaming black carriages stood in the yellow mud of Michigan Avenue in front of the Lexington Hotel. President Cleveland, look at that. Michigan Avenue, President Cleveland, all in Chicago. Who would have thought? President Cleveland boarded the 7th carriage, a landau. Burnham and Davis shared the 6th. Both men behaved, although they still had not shed their mutual distrust, nor resolved their struggle for supreme control of the fare. The Duke of Veragua, a direct descendant of Columbus, sat in the 14th carriage. The Duchess occupied the 15th with Bertha Palmer, whose diamonds radiated in almost palpable heat. Mayor Harrison took the very last carriage and drew the loudest cheers. Assorted other dignitaries filled the remaining carriages. As the procession rumbled south along Michigan Avenue towards Jackson Park, the street behind became a following sea of 200,000 Chicagoans on foot and horseback, in phaetons, Victorias, and Stanhopes, and packed into omnibuses and streetcars. Many thousands of others boarded trains and jammed the bright yellow cars dubbed cattle cars, built by the Illinois Central to haul as many people as possible to the fair. Anyone with a white handkerchief waved it, and white flags hung from every lamppost. Damp bunting swelled from building facades. 1,500 members of the Columbian Guard in their new uniforms of light blue sackcloth, white gloves, and yellow-lined black capes met the throng, and cordial directed everyone to the administration building, recognizable by its lofty gold dome. Right, so here we go. It's exposition day. You know, they got to present something, and we're about to see if they're going to deliver or not, because all the big names are showing up. All the big names are definitely showing up. We're going to go ahead and look for a little loot, just a tad bit of loot. Hoping we can get something decent, so we can go ahead and destroy some folk late game if we are capable of surviving that long. Alright, we already got action. Looks like, whoa. The ego. The ego on this clan. This absolute buffoon. Exposition day. Can they pull it off? We are yet to see, but we're going to find out. I feel like there's something on this side, no? It's looted. Alright, let's go ahead and get some cover here. Was hoping to loot up a little more than this, but I'm not complaining, you know. I would like a tad bit more of a looting chance. All right, let's see. Hopefully this is decent stuff. Just need a little something, you know, a little Where does this take me? Nowhere, I guess. Alright. Just a bathroom break, I guess. Oh, we have shots. Do forgive me for all this looting and no hiding and just continuing to read. That's what I was looking for. Okay. Okay, alright. Let's go ahead and look for a bush. Chances are, oh, I like all this loot. It's a shame I have to get rid of any of it, but you know, decisions got to be made. Let's go ahead and look for a nice bush. Nice bush to get cozy in, you know. You all know what I'm talking about. You all know. You all know. You guys are living the same life I'm living. You know what I'm saying. Perfect. Let's continue reading. The procession approached the fair from the west through the Midway Plaisance, just as the president's carriage turned into the Avenue of Nations, which ran the 13-block length of the Midway. The sun emerged, igniting a roar of approval from spectators as it lit the 40 concessions that lined the avenue, some the size of small towns. The carriages rolled past Sitting Bull's cabin, the Lapland village, the compound of the allegedly cannibalistic Dahomens, and directly opposite, the farm offered omelets made from ostrich eggs, though in fact the eggs came from domestic chickens. The procession passed the Austrian village and a captive balloon park, where a hydrogen balloon tethered to the ground took visitors aloft. At the center of the Midway, the procession veered around the woefully incomplete Ferris wheel, which Burnham eyed with displeasure. Oh, so they offered this thing incomplete. Interesting. It was a half-moon of steel, encased in a skyscraper of wooden false work. When President Cleveland's carriage came to Sol Bloom's Algerian village at the Muslim core of the Midway, Bloom gave a nod, and the women of the village dropped their veils. Bloom swore it was a customary gesture of respect. But of course, with Bloom, one can never be sure. I like that. It's a measure of respect. It's a gesture of respect. Take your tops off. The carriages skirted the street in Cairo, not yet open, another disappointment, and passed the Turkish village and the Java lunchroom. Outside Hagenbeck's animal show, the most famous traveling zoo of the day, handlers prodded 4 trained lions into full roar. To the right, in the smoky distance, the president saw the banners of Buffalo Bill's Wild West flying over the arena Colonel Cody had built at 62nd Street. At last, the carriages entered Jackson Park. Here we go. There would be miracles at the fair. The chocolate Venus de Milo would not melt. The 22,000-pound cheese in the Wisconsin pavilion. I told you, Johnny, cheesehead. 22,000-pound cheese in the Wisconsin pavilion would not mold. But the greatest miracle was the transformation of the grounds during the long, soggy night that had preceded Cleveland's arrival. When Herbert's steed returned the next morning, a plain of wind-rippled water still covered portions of the park. But the empty boxcars and packing debris were gone. 10,000 men working through the night had touched up the paint and staff and planted pansies and laid sod as 1,000 scrub women washed, waxed, and polished the floor of the great buildings. As the morning advanced, the sun emerged more fully. In the bright rain scrubbed air, those portions of the landscape not still submerged looked cheerful, trim, and neat. When the fair opened, said Paul Starrett, one of Burnham's men, Olmsted's lawns were the first amazement. All right. That's a win, right? At least your grass is good. At 11 o'clock, President Cleveland ascended the stairs to the speaker's platform, erected outside at the east end of the administration building, and took his seat, the signal for the ceremony to begin. The crowd surged forward. 20 women fainted. Reporters lucky enough to be in the front rows rescued one elderly woman by hauling her over a railing and laying her out on a press table. Members of the guard waded in with swords drawn. Mayhem reigned until Director General Davis signaled the orchestra to begin playing the introductory Columbian March. I wonder if they ever played the Imperial March, Star Wars style, you know? Chastened by criticism of the stupefying length. Whoops. There we go. Stupefying length of October's Dedication Day ceremony, the fair's officers had kept the opening day program short and pledged to honor the timetable at all costs. First came a blessing, given by a blind chaplain to an audience made deaf by size and distance. Next came a poetic ode to Columbus that was as long and difficult to endure as the Admiral's voyage itself. Then from a Pinta's foretop fell a cry, a trumpet song, light ho, light. That kind of thing. Director General Davis spoke next and offered a meaty helping of distorted reality, praising the way that the National Commission, the Exposition Company, and the Board of Lady Managers had worked together without strife to produce such a brilliant exposition. Those privy to the warfare in between these agencies watched Burnham closely, but saw no change in his expression. Davis offered the podium to the president. Okay, all right. So far, so good. Nothing, it wasn't perfect. The opening wasn't perfect. Obviously, this is supposed to be like a massive exposition. And, it didn't turn out that way. Let's just call it what it is. It didn't turn out that way. They probably wished it did. Okay? It just wasn't meant to be, I guess. I like this gun. I'm going to take this gun. But I like this gun too. Oh, decisions that need to be made. If pump and dump was anything but blue, I probably wouldn't have grabbed it. Get into a nice bush. Let's get into zone. Is this in zone? Afraid that it might not be. I can go into zone a little more. That's a good lesson of life, right? I mean, sometimes you just need the pressure of doing something to do it. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect the first time. Doesn't mean you're going to be prepared the moment that it's, needed. But that pressure, it in a weird way, it does help you out. It just does. Uh-oh. Oh, jeez. Okay, I don't want to be... How close is this guy? I can take these, thingamabobber's up to. AR. There's a little thingamabobber head. Whoa. Scope into the sky. Oh, dude's here. I didn't even see this guy. Bot. Am I gonna style on this kid too? Style on him, Ryan. Style on him. Style on him. Style on him. Okay. This is my AR. Alright, let's go into, this is a very hot, whoa. I don't know who's shooting from where. This clown? Okay. I gotta get out of here, man. I don't want to play this. Not this way. Oh my gosh, not again. Not an ad, right? Not an ad?
Experts. Don't know what you need?
Not an ad right now. Not an ad right now. Oh, no.
Wondering if you're covered? Ralph's accepts most insurance plans. You heard it right. Our vaccine experts make it easy to get vaccinated, so you can keep being an expert in what you're passionate about. Ralph's, a world of care is in store. Learn more at ralphs.com/vaccines. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
I hope nobody ever shops at Ralph's just because of that. Alright, let's get out of here. I don't want to be in this spot. Let's look for a nice boosh. Not seeing booshes anywhere. Boosh? There we go, boosh. Rockets, maybe? I think I'm at the limit. Okay. Let's continue reading. Let me turn on my flashlight. It is kind of a shame that the exposition didn't turn out to be perfect from day one. I mean, I would have assumed that, especially in like modern day, right? Nobody wants to present anything unless it's perfect. If it's not perfect, you know, they don't see it as worthy of being presentable. The hell? I thought I saw a car in front of me. Let's go on. Oh shoot, we're in the top 10 already. I don't even know how that happened. Let's see. Gotta find my place again now. Okay, got it. Found my place. Cleveland. Immense in black paused a moment in sober examination of the crowd before him. Nearby stood a table draped in an American flag, on top of which lay a blue and red velvet pillow supporting a telegraph key made of gold. Every bit of terrace, lawn, and railroad in the court of honor was occupied. The men in black and gray, many of the women in gowns of extravagant hues, violet, scarlet, emerald, and wearing hats with ribbons, springs, and feathers. All right, so it was a very classy affair, so to speak, right? Essentially what they're getting at here. I barely missed that guy, and we gotta go that way, don't we? Alright, this is top 5, so I typically don't want to play these too hard, but I feel like I kind of have to. Oh, this is such a good weapon to have in these moments. He's this way. Where are you going, fella? Let these two gentlemen fight it out. I can third party a little bit. I saw him on my. Yeah, I see him going that way. Top 4 sitch. What? Oh, no way, no way, no way, no way, no way. Oh, I'm dead. Damn. What? Play this rock. No. I threw. What was he at? I could have pumped and dumped him easily. What was he at? Let me see. What was he at? I gotta see his health. How can I check? Oh, I can't check. Oh, dude stunk too. That's the way the cookie crumbles, man. Let's keep reading. Okay. Let's see here. A tall man in a huge white hat and a white buckskin coat, heavily trimmed in silver, stood a full head above the men around him. Buffalo Bill. Women watched him. Sunlight fell between tufts of fast shredding cloud and lit the white Panamas that flecked the audience. From the president's vantage point, the scene was festive and crisp, but at ground level, there was a water and mud and the mucid sucking that accompanied any shift in position. The only human form with dry feet was that of Daniel Chester French's statue of the Republic, Big Mary, which stood hidden under a silo of canvas. Cleveland's speech was the shortest of all. As he concluded, he moved to the flag-draped table. As by a touch, the machinery that gives light to this vast exposition is set in motion, he said. So at the same instant, let our hopes and aspirations awaken forces which in all time to come shall influence the welfare, the dignity, and the freedom of mankind. Okay, I see what they're doing. Kind of larger than life exhibition. At precisely 12:08, he touched the gold key. A roar radiated outward as successive strata of the crowd learned that the key had been pressed. Workmen on rooftops immediately signaled to peers stationed throughout the park, and to sailors abroad the warship Michigan anchored in the lake. The key closed an electric circuit that activated the electromagnetic engine stop and starter attached to the giant 3,000 horsepower Alice steam engine at the machinery building. Okay. So it was like a grand opening, right? In a weird way. In its own little funny way. I wonder if they actually got it to be what they eventually wanted it to be. Oh, dude, no, you're not doing this right. I need that AR. No. You can't do this to me. I'm gonna show you why. Gosh. This dude blows, dude. Let's continue reading. I hope this dude doesn't win the game. The starter's silver-plated gong rang, a sprocket turned, a valve opened, and the engine whooshed to life on exquisitely machined shafts and bearings. Immediately, 30 other engines in the building began to thrum. At the fair's waterworks, 3 huge Worthington pumps began stretching their shafts and pistons. Like praying mantises, shaken off the cold, millions of gallons of water began surging through the fair's mains. Engines everywhere took steam until the ground trembled. An American flag the size of a mainsail unfurled from the tallest flagpole in the court of honor. And immediately 2 men like-sized flags tumbled from flanking poles, one representing Spain, the other Columbus. Water pressurized by the Worthington pumps exploded from the MacMonnies fountain and soared 100 feet into the sky, casting a sheet rainbow across the sun and driving visitors to raise their umbrellas against the spray. Banners and flags and gonfalons suddenly bellied from every cornice. Cornice, huh? A huge red banner unscrolled along the full length of the machinery building, and the canvas slipped from Big Mary's gold leaf shoulders. Sunlight clattering from her skin caused men and women to shield their eyes. 200 white doves leaped for the sky. The guns of the Michigan fired. Steam whistled steam whistles shrieked. Spontaneously, the throng began to sing, "My country, 'tis of thee," which many thought of as the national anthem, although no song had yet received that designation. Interesting. So they didn't make it thinking it was going to be the national anthem. They just kind of made it, and it was what it was. As the crowd thundered, a man eased up beside a thin, pale woman with a bent neck. In the next instant, Jane Addams realized her purse was gone. The great fair had begun. Ooh, all right. So now you're seeing, shit go down. Shit's going down, man. Although Burnham recognized that much work lay ahead, Olmsted had to redouble his efforts, and Ferris needed to finish that damned wheel. The success of the exposition now seemed assured. Congratulations arrived by telegraph and post. A friend told Burnham, "The scene burnt on me with the beauty of a full-blown rose." The official history of the fair estimated that 250,000 people packed Jackson Park on opening day. Two other estimates put the total at 500,000 and 620,000. By the day's end, there was every indication that Chicago's fair would become the most heavily attended entertainment in the history of the world. The optimism lasted all of 24 hours. On Tuesday, May the 2nd, only 10,000 people came to Jackson Park, a rate of attendance that, if continued, would guarantee the fair a place in history as one of the greatest failures of all time. The yellow cattle cars were mostly empty, as were the cars of the Alley L that ran along 63rd Street. All hope that this was merely an anomaly disappeared the next day, when the forces that had been battering the nation's economy erupted in a panic on Wall Street that caused stock prices to plummet. Over the next week, the news grew steadily more disturbing. That's not good. On the night of Thursday, May the 5th, officials of the National Cordage Company, a trust that controlled 80% of America's rope production, placed itself in receivership. Next, Chicago's Chemical National Bank ceased operations. A closure that seemed particularly ominous to fair officials because Chemical alone had won congressional approval to open a branch at the World's Fair in no less central a location than the administration building. 3 days later, another large Chicago bank failed, and soon after that, a third, the Evanston National Bank in Burnham's town. Dozens of other failures occurred around the country. In Brunswick, Georgia, the presidents of two national banks held a meeting. One president calmly excused himself, entering his private office, and shot himself through the head. Jeez. Dude, you never know, man. Just think of that, right? This dude, if he calmly was just like, "You'll excuse me for a second, won't you?" "Oh, yes, certainly, sir. Of course." Bam! That's rough, man. That's unbelievable. Both banks failed. In Lincoln, Nebraska, the Nebraska Savings Bank had become the favorite bank of school children. The town's teachers served as agents of the bank and every week collected money from the children for deposit in each child's passbook account. Word that the bank was near failure caused the street out front to fill with children pleading for their money. Jeez. Other banks came to Nebraska Savings' rescue, and the so-called Children's Run was quelled. People who otherwise might have traveled to Chicago to see the fair now stayed home. The terrifying economy was discouraging enough, but so too were reports of the unfinished character of all of the fair. If people had only one chance to go, they wanted to do it when all the exhibits were in place. Every attraction was in operation, especially the Ferris wheel, said to be a marvel of engineering that would make the Eiffel Tower seem like a child's sculpture, provided it ever actually worked and did not collapse in the first brisk wind. Fair point. Too many features of the fair remained unfinished. Burnham acknowledged he and his brigade of architects, draftsmen, engineers, and contractors had accomplished so much in an impossibly short time, but apparently not enough to overcome the damping effects of the fast-degrading economy. The elevators in the Manufacturers and Liberal Arts building, touted as one of the wonders of the fair, still had not begun operation. The Ferris wheel looked only half finished. Olmsted had yet to complete grading and planting the grounds around the Krupp Pavilion, the Leather Building, and the Cold Storage Building. He had not yet laid the brick pavement at the fair's train station or sodded the New York Central exhibit, the Pennsylvania Railroad exhibit, Coral Hall, and the Illinois State Building, which to many Chicagoans was the single most important building at the fair. Speaking of the Illinois State Building, the installation of exhibits and company pavilions within the Electricity Building was woefully behind schedule. Westinghouse only began building its pavilion on Tuesday, May 2nd. Okay, so that's not a good sign, right? We're gonna start building on the second day of the exhibition. Burnham issued stern directives to Olmsted and Ferris and to every contractor still at work. Olmsted in particular felt the pressure, but also felt hobbled by the persistent delays in installation of exhibits and the damage done by the repeated comings and goings of drays and freight cars. General Electric alone had 15 carloads of exhibit materials stored on the grounds. Preparations for the opening day ceremony had cost Olmsted's department valuable time. What the fuck is this? Holy hell. Dude, what an awful song. Mentos, don't buy them. Made me lose my place. Let me find it really fast. Preparations for the opening day ceremony had cost Olmsted's department valuable time, as did the planting and grading required to repair the damage the day's crowd had inflicted throughout the park. Many of the fair's 57 miles of roadway were still either submerged or coated with mud, and others had been gouged and trenched by vehicles that had used the roads while they were still sodden. Olmsted's road contractor deployed a force of 800 men and 100 teams of horses to begin regrading the roads and laying new gravel. I remained fairly well, Olmsted wrote to his son on May the 15th, but get horribly tired every day. It is hard to get things done. My body is so overworked, and I constantly fail to accomplish what I expect to do. First and foremost, Burnham knew the fair had to be furnished, but in the meantime, lures had to be cast to encourage people to shed their fears of financial ruin and come to Chicago. That's a fair point. People were all afraid about what was going on, rightfully so. You got to get them to want to come down anyways. I mean, it's a entertainment extravaganza that isn't going to solve your financial woes, but it's going to be a moment you might remember for the rest of your life. Your financial woes will come and go, but that moment of being able to see that exposition on the same day everybody else is there, you're going to remember that, I think. He created the new post of director of functions and assigned Frank Millet to the job, giving him wide latitude to do what he could to boost attendance. Millet orchestrated fireworks, shows, and parades. He set aside special days to honor individual states and nations and to feat distinct groups of workers, including cobblers, millers, confectioners, and stenographers. The Knights of Pythias got their own day, as did the Catholic Knights of America. Millet set August 25th as Colored People Feet Day. Feet, F-E-T-E, not feet like on our bodies. And October 9th as Chicago Day. Attendance began to increase, but not by much. By the end of May, the daily average of paying visitors was only 33,000. Still far below what Burnham and everyone else had expected. And more to the point, far below the level required to make the fair profitable. Worse yet, Congress and the National Commission, bowing to pressure from the Sabbatarian movement, had ordered the fair closed on Sundays, thus withdrawing its wonders from a few million wage earners for whom Sunday was the only day off. That's rough. Burnham hoped for an early cure to the nation's financial malice. But the economy did not oblige. More banks failed, layoffs increased, industrial production sagged, and strikes grew more violent. On June the 5th, worried depositors staged runs on 8 Chicago banks. Burnham's own firm saw the flow of new commissions come to a halt. Jeez. So so it's not going as expected. I mean, the exposition could be a lot better. It's obviously not even finished to begin with, and that's what they're presenting to the good people. But the people don't even have every single day available to go to them, right? The Sundays are taken away, and that's by the government. It's not even by the exposition and what they're willing to do for the public. You know, it's unbelievable that so many things can go wrong and you still have to present something. It's just, you know, you think show and tell or a big presentation is pressure. I mean, this is pressure beyond belief, because I'm assuming if things go wrong, you know, they have financial ruin down the road to look forward to. And on top of that, it's not like the economy's doing any good to begin with, right? They're in recession. They're seeing banks fail. They're seeing businesses go out. They're seeing children ask for their money back from the banks. I mean, it's unbelievable. So that's that subchapter. Let's continue. The next subchapter is the World's Fair Hotel. The first guests began arriving at Holmes's World's Fair Hotel, though not in the volume he and every other South Side hotelier had expected. The guests were drawn mainly by the hotel's location, with Jackson Park a short trip east on the 63rd Street leg of the Alley L. Even though the rooms on Holmes's second and third floors were largely empty, when male visitors asked about accommodations, Holmes told them with a look of sincere regret that he had no vacancies and kindly referred them to other hotels nearby. His guest rooms began to fill with women, most quite young and apparently unused to living alone. Holmes found them intoxicating. I wonder why. I wonder why. Minnie Williams's continual presence became increasingly awkward. With the arrival of each dewy new guest, she became more jealous, more inclined to stay close to him. Her jealousy did not particularly annoy him. It simply became inconvenient. Minnie was an asset now, an acquisition to be warehoused until needed, like cocooned prey. Holmes checked newspaper advertisements for a rental flat far enough from his building to make impromptu visits unlikely. He found a place on the north side at 1220 Wrightwood Avenue, a dozen or so blocks west of Lincoln Park, near Halsted. It was a pretty shaded portion of the city, though its prettiness was to Holmes merely an element to be entered into his calculations. The flat occupied the top floor of a large private house owned by a man named John Oker, whose daughters managed its rental. They first advertised the flat on April 1893. Holmes went alone to examine the apartment and met John Oker. He introduced himself as Henry Gordon and told Oker he was in the real estate business. Oker was impressed with the prospective tenant. He was near, maybe fastidious was the better word, and his clothing and behavior suggested financial well-being. Oker was delighted when Henry Gordon said he would take the apartment, even more delighted when Gordon paid him $40 cash in advance. Gordon told Oker he and his wife would arrive in a few weeks. Holmes explained the move to Minnie as a long overdue necessity. Now that they were married, they needed a bigger, nicer place than what they currently occupied in the castle. Soon the building would be bustling with visitors to the fair. Even without the guests, however, it was no place to raise a family. The idea of a large, sunny flat did appeal to Minnie. Truth was, the castle could be gloomy. Was always gloomy. And Minnie wanted everything as perfect as possible for Anne's visit. She was a bit perplexed, however, as to why Harry would choose a place so far away on the north side, when there were so many lovely homes in Englewood. She reasoned, perhaps, that he did not want to pay the exorbitant rents that everyone was charging now that the World's Fair was underway. Holmes and Minnie moved into a new flat on June the 1st of 1893. Laura Oker, the owner's daughter, and Gordon seemed to be very attentive to his wife. The couple went on bicycle rides, and for a time kept a hired girl. What? For a time kept a hired girl. I can only say that this behavior was all that could be wished during his sojourn with us, Miss Oker said. Minnie Williams he introduced as his wife, and we always addressed her as Mrs. Gordon. She called him Henry. With Minnie housed on Wrightwood Avenue, Holmes found himself free to enjoy his World's Fair hotel. His guests spent most of their time at Jackson Park or on the Midway, and often did not return until after midnight. While present in the hotel, they tended to stay in their rooms, since Holmes provided none of the common areas, the libraries, game parlors, and writing rooms that the big hotels like the Richelieu and Metropole and the nearby New Julian offered as a matter of routine. Nor did he supply the darkroom facilities that hotels closest to Jackson Park had begun installing to serve the growing number of amateur photographers, so-called Kodak friends, who carried the newest portable cameras. The women found the hotel rather dreary, especially at night, but the presence of its handsome and clearly wealthy owner helped dispel some of its bleakness. Unlike the men they knew back in Minneapolis, or Des Moines, or Sioux Falls, Holmes was warm and charming and talkative, and touched them with a familiarity that, while perhaps offensive back home, somehow seemed all right. In the new world of Chicago. Just another aspect of the great adventure on which these women had embarked. And what good was an adventure if it did not feel a little dangerous? As best anyone could tell, the owner also was a forgiving soul. Oh, really? Did not seem at all concerned when now and then a guest checked out without advance notice, leaving her bills unpaid. Then he often smelled vaguely of chemicals, that in fact the building as a whole often had a medicinal odor. Bothered no one. He was, after all, a physician, and his building had a pharmacy on the ground floor. Okay. It's not nerve-wracking at all. I mean, I don't see any red flags with what's going on here. How long are we into this thing? I don't want to make this thing too long. 50 minutes. Okay, we got a little time. This will be the last game. I'll read a little bit the next two sub-chapters. The next sub-chapter is called Prendergast. It's a paragraph and a half. It goes, Patrick Prendergast believed his appointment as corporation counsel was about to occur. He wanted to be ready and began making plans for how to staff his office once the appointment came through. On May 9th of 1893, he got out another of his postcards and addressed it to a man named W.F. Cooling in the Stats Zeitberg building. Prendergast lectured Cooling on the fact that Jews was the ultimate legal authority. Jesus. Jews. It looks like Jews in the dark. Interesting. Cooling on the fact that Jesus was the ultimate legal authority, then gave him the good news. I am candidate for corporation counsel, he wrote. If I become corporation counsel, you shall be my assistant. Interesting. Okay. So this dude was a bit of a Jesus freak, huh? I can totally understand why. Alright, this is going to be a dense chapter. The next sub-chapter is called Night in the Magician. Night is the Magician. I like the way that's phrased. Night is the Magician. Despite its incomplete exhibits, rutted paths, stretches of unplanted ground, the exposition revealed to its early visitors a vision of what the city could be and ought to be. The Black City to the north lay steeped in smoke and garbage, but here in the White City of the fair, visitors found clear public bathrooms, pure water, an ambulance service, electric streetlights, and a sewage processing system that yielded acres of manure from farmers. Okay, so they were really going all out here, and you can tell what the standards were. I mean, they're lucky to have, clean stuff, right? Which tells you about the times. I mean, the struggle was real in Chicago, man. It really was. This Prendergast guy, it sounds like, I don't know. I mean, to say that Jesus is the ultimate authority of what? What are we judging on, you know what I mean? It doesn't make much sense to say he's the ultimate authority, but not know what it is that, whoa. Aw, I wanted to play that one, man. Dude's annoying. I hate people, you know? Anyways, saying Jesus is the ultimate authority is kind of weird. I'd like to see, just as a side note, I'm going to Google this later. Because anything you Google, you can basically find a few responses that, echo your sentiments of the question, right? If you ask the question, is Jesus the ultimate authority? You'll find a response that says something along the lines of 10 reasons why Jesus is the ultimate authority. You know what I mean? You'll lead yourself into an answer that is incredibly biased based on the question you asked. I'd like to see what those people's reasoning is, really. But anyways, we can continue. The Night is the Magician. There was daycare for the children of the visitors, and much fun was made of the fact that when you left your child at the children's building, you received a claim check in return. Chicago's small but vocal censorians feared that impoverished parents would turn the building into a depository for unwanted children. Damn. You know what? I can see why that would be a fear. I don't think that would have. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I hope that would not have happened. I really hope that didn't happen. I really hope that wasn't even a question, you know what I mean? If I'm this guy, I drop the one-shot pistol, pick up a shotgun, and laser this guy. No. There you go. Showtime. Beautiful. You are a laser. Go ahead. One shot. Just one shot him. What do you... There you go. Style on him. One shot. Easy. Only one child. Poor Charlie Johnson was ever thus abandoned, and not a single child was lost, although anxiety invested the closing moments of each day. I can imagine. Oh, Charlie Johnson, wishing you well, brother, wherever you or your descendants might be. Within the fair's buildings, visitors encountered devices and concepts new to them and to the world. They heard live music played by an orchestra in New York and transmitted to the fair by long-distance telephone. They saw the first moving pictures on Edison kinetoscope, and they watched, stunned, as lightning chattered from Nikola Tesla's body. They saw even more ungodly things. The first zipper, the first ever all-electric kitchen, which included an automatic dishwasher and a box purporting to contain everything a cook would need to make pancakes, under the brand name Aunt Jemima. Yeah, never heard of her before. Funny how things work out, huh? They sampled a new, oddly flavored gum called Juicy Fruit and caramel-coated popcorn called Cracker Jack. A new cereal, shredded wheat, seemed unlikely to succeed shredded doormat, some called it, but a new beer did well, winning the exposition's top beer award. Forever afterward, its brewer called it, flipping page here. What did the brewer call it? The brewer called it Pabst Blue Ribbon. Visitors also encountered the latest and arguably most important organizational invention of the century, the vertical file created by Melville Dewey, inventor of the Dewey Decimal System. Sprinkled among these exhibits were novelties of all kinds. A locomotive made of spooled silk. What the hell is spooled silk? Let me get comfortable here. Gotta learn about this spooling, huh? A suspension bridge built out of Kirk's soap. A giant map of the United States made of pickles. Prune makers sent along a full-scale knight on horseback sculpted out of prunes. And the Avery salt mines of Louisiana displayed a copy of the Statue of Liberty carved from a block of salt. Visitors dubbed it Lot's Wife. One of the most compelling and chilling exhibits was the Krupp Pavilion, where Fritz Krupp, bless you, Mom, where Fritz Krupp's pet monster stood at the center of an array of heavy guns. A popular guide to the fair called The Time Saver rated every exhibit on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being merely interesting and 3 being remarkably interesting, and gave the Krupp Pavilion a 3. For many visitors, however, the weapons were a disturbing presence. Mrs. D.C. Taylor, a frequent visitor to the fair, called Krupp's biggest gun a fearful, hideous thing, breathing of blood and carnage, a triumph of barbarism, crouching amid the world's triumphs of civilization. Mrs. Taylor adored the court of honor and was struck by the oddly sober manner people adopted as they walked among its places. Everyone about us moved softly and spoke gently. No one seemed hurried or impatient. All were under a spell that held us from the opening of the fair until its close. In the midway, she found a very different atmosphere. Here Mrs. Taylor ventured into a street in Cairo, open at last, and witnessed her first belly dance. She watched the dancer carefully. She takes a few light steps to one side, pauses, strikes the castanets, and then the same to the other side, advances a few steps, pauses, and causes her abdomen to rise and fall several times in exact time to the music, without moving a muscle in any other part of her body, with incredible rapidity, at the same time holding her head and feet perfectly rigid. As Mrs. Taylor and her companions left the street, she sang quietly to herself, "My country 'tis of thee," like a frightened child easing past a graveyard. Okay, so I'm assuming very conservative woman sees something like a belly dance. She goes, "Oh my God, that's not Jesus-like." She's just scared as hell. Are women allowed to show their bellies like this? No way, right? No way. Let's continue. The fair was so big, so beyond grasp, that the Colombian guards found themselves hammered with questions. It was a disease, rhetorical smallpox, and every visitor exhibited it in some degree. The guards answered the same question over and over, and the question came fast, often with an accusatory edge. Some questions were just odd. "In which building is the Pope?" one woman asked. She was overheard by writer Teresa Dean, who wrote a daily column from the fair. "The Pope is not here, madame," the guard said. "Where is he?" "In Italy." "Europe, madame." The woman frowned. "Which way is that?" Oh my gosh. Convinced now that the woman was joking, the guard cheerfully quipped, 3 blocks under the lagoon," she said. "How do I get there?" Another visitor, hunting for an exhibit of wax figures, asked the guard, "Can you tell me where the building is that has the artificial human beings?" He began telling her he did not know, when another visitor jumped in. "I have heard of them," he said. "They are over in the women's building. Just ask for the lady managers." One male visitor, who had lost both his legs and made his way around the fair on false limbs and crutches, must have looked particularly knowledgeable, because another visitor prepped him incessantly with questions until finally the amputee complained about the strain of answering so many questions was wearing him out. "There's just one more thing I'd like to know," his questioner asked, "and I'll not trouble you anymore." "Well, what is it?" "I'd like to know how you lost your legs." The amputee said he would answer only on strict conditions that this was indeed the last question. He would allow no others. Was this clear? His persecutor agreed. The amputee, fully aware that his answer would raise an immediate corollary question, said, "They were bit off." "Bit off? How?" But a deal was a deal. Chuckling, the amputee hobbled away. That's such a good twist. Answer the question that the person asked with an answer that only raises more questions. Genius. As the fair fought for attendance, Buffalo Bill's Wild West drew crowds by the tens of thousands. If Cody had gotten the fair's concession he had asked for, these crowds first would have had to pay admission to Jackson Park and would have boosted the fair's attendance and revenue to a welcome degree. Cody also was able to hold performances on Sundays, and being outside the fairgrounds did not have to contribute half his revenue to the exposition company. Over the 6 months of the fair, an average of 12,000 people would attend each of Cody's 318 performances, for a total attendance of nearly 4 million. Often Cody upstaged the fair. His main entrance was so close to one of the busiest exposition gates that some visitors thought his show was the World's Fair and were said to have gone home happy. In June, a group of cowboys organized the 1,000-mile race from Shawron, Nebraska to Chicago in honor of the fair and planned to end it in Jackson Park. The prize was a rich one, $1,000. Cody contributed another 500 and a fancy saddle on condition the race end in his town area. The organizers accepted. 10 riders, including Rattlesnake Pete and a presumably reformed Nebraska bandit named Doc Middleton. These names just sound like criminals, right? Rattlesnake Pete and Doc Middleton set out from the Baleen Hotel in Chedron on the morning of June 14th of 1893. The rules of the race allowed each rider to start with 2 horses and required that he stop at various checkpoints along the way. The most important rule held that when he crossed the finish line, he had to be riding one of the original horses. The race was wild, replete with broken rules and injured animals. Middleton dropped out soon after reaching Illinois. 4 others likewise failed to finish. The first rider across the line was a railroad man named John Barry, riding Poison, who galloped into the Wild West Arena on June 27th at 9:30 in the morning. Buffalo Bill, resplendent in white buckskin and silver, was there to greet him, along with the rest of the Wild West Company and 10,000 or so residents of Chicago. John Barry had to settle for the saddle alone. However, for subsequent investigation revealed that shortly after the start of the race, he had loaded his horses on an eastbound train and climbed aboard himself to take the first 100 miles in comfort. Oh, this dude blatantly cheated. Just imagine what life would be like if iPhones weren't a thing, right? The things people would try. Because nobody would find out. Not without investigation, at least. Cody upstaged the fair again in July when exposition officials rejected a request from Mayor Carter Harrison that the fair dedicate one day to the poor children of Chicago and admit them at no charge. The directors thought this was too much to ask, given their struggle to boost the rate of paid admission. Every ticket, even half-price children's tickets, mattered. Buffalo Bill promptly declared Waifs Day at the Wild West and offered any kid in Chicago a free train ticket, free admission to the show, and free access to the whole Wild West encampment, plus all the candy and ice cream the children could eat. All right, well, there you go. That's how you get them. 15,000 showed up. Yeah, I bet. Buffalo Bill's Wild West may indeed have been in incongruity, as the doctors had declared in rejecting his request for a concession within Jackson Park, but the citizens of Chicago had fallen in love. The skies cleared and stayed clear. Gotta write a little something here. Just gonna make a little annotation here, a little thought I'm having. All right, here we go. Continuing on. The skies cleared and stayed clear. Railroads dried, and newly opened flowers perfumed the air. Exhibitions gradually completed their installations, and electricians removed the last misconnects from the elaborate circuits that linked the fair's nearly 200,000 incandescent bulbs throughout the fairgrounds on Burnham's orders. Cleanup efforts intensified. On June 1st of 1893, workers removed temporary railroad tracks that had scarred the lawns near the lagoon and just south of the Electricity and Mines building. A strikingly noticeable change in the general condition of things is the absence of large piles of boxes stacked up in the exterior courts around manufacturers, agriculture, machinery, and other large buildings. The Tribune reported on June 2nd unopened crates and rubbish that just 1 week earlier had cluttered the interior. Next page. Cluttered the interior. Cluttered the interior of the Manufacturers and Liberal Arts Building, particularly at the pavilions erected by Russia, Norway, Denmark, and Canada. Likewise, had been removed, and now these spaces presented an entirely different and vastly improved appearance. Although such interior exhibits were compelling, the earliest visitors to Jackson Park saw immediately that the fair's greatest power lay in the strange gravity of the buildings themselves. The Court of Honor produced an effect of majesty and beauty that was far greater than even the dream conjured in the Rookery Library. Some visitors found themselves so moved by the Court of Honor that immediately upon entering, they began to weep. No single element accounted for this phenomenon. Each building was huge to begin with, but the impression of mass was amplified by the fact that all the buildings were neoclassical in design. All had cornices set at the same height, all had been painted the same soft white, and all were so shockingly beautifully unlike anything the majority of visitors ever had seen in their own dusty hometowns. No other scene of man's creation seemed to me so perfect as this Court of Honor, wrote James Fullerton, Muirhead, an author and guidebook editor. The court, he wrote, was practically blameless. The aesthetic sense of the beholder was as fully and unreservedly satisfied as in looking at a masterpiece of painting or sculpture, and at the same time was soothed and elevated by a sense of amplitude and grandeur such as no single work of art could produce. Edgar Lee Masters, Chicago attorney and emerging poet, called the court an inexhaustible dream of beauty. I like that. Just took away his breath. It was that good. Let's see what we're looking at. Court of Honor. Wow, that is beautiful. It's very nice. There's the White City. 1893. Wow. Different time in humanity, man. It's unbelievable. Okay. Let's continue. The shade color, or more accurately, the shared absence of color, produced an especially alluring range of effects. As the sun traveled the sky, in the early morning when Burnham conducted his inspections, the buildings were a pale blue and seemed to float on a ghostly cushion of ground mist. Each evening the sun colored the buildings ochre and lit the motes of dust raised by the breeze until the air itself became a soft orange veil. One such evening, Burnham led a tour of the fair aboard an electric launch for a group that included John Root's widow, Dora, and a number of foreign emissaries. Burnham loved escorting friends and dignitaries through the grounds, but sought always to orchestrate the journeys so that his friends saw the fair the way he believed it should be seen, with the buildings presented from a certain perspective, in a particular order, as if he were still back in his library showing drawings instead of real structures. He had tried to impose his aesthetic will on all the fair's visitors, by insisting during the first year of planning that the number of entrances to Jackson Park be limited to a few, and that these be situated so that people had to enter first through the Court of Honor, either through a large portal at the rail station on the west side of the park, or an entry on the east from the Exposition Wharf. Okay. I can see what he's trying to say. It's like it has to give a certain impression, and unless you look at it from a certain light, you're not going to get that impression. So I can understand what he's trying to do. I can get it. I can dig it. Is anybody here? Uh-oh. Somebody might in fact be here. Alright, let's loot up a little bit and let's get out of her. Let's get into a nice bush. Bit of an embarrassment, but, you know, 'tis what it is. Let's go find a bush so we can continue reading. I like that one over there. Not my problem. Let's continue. His quest to create a powerful first impression was good showmanship, but it also exposed the aesthetic despot rescinding within. He did not get his way. The directors insisted on many gates, and the railroads refused to channel their exposition traffic through a single depot. Burnham never quite surrendered. Throughout the fair, he said, "We insisted on sending our own guests, whose opinions we specially valued, into the Grand Court first." The electric launch carrying Burnham, Dora Root, and the foreign dignitaries cut silently through the lagoons, scattering the white city reflected upon its surface. The setting sun gilded the terraces on the east bank, but cast the west bank into dark blue shadow. Women in dresses of crimson and aquamarine walked slowly among the embankments. The hell? Oh. Embankments. Voices drifted across the water, laced now and then with laughter that rang like crystal touched in a toast. The next day, after what surely had been a difficult night, Dora Root wrote to Burnham to thank him for the tour and to attempt to convey the complexity of her feelings. Our honor on the lagoon last evening proved the crown of a charming day, she wrote. Indeed, I fear we would have lingered on indefinitely had not our foreign friends prepared a more highly spiced entertainment. I think I should never willingly cease drifting in that dreamland. The scenes elicited conflicting emotions. I find it all infinitely sad, she wrote, but at the same time so entrancing that I often feel as if it would be the part of wisdom to fly at once to the woods or mountains where one can always find peace. There is much I long to say to you about your work of the past 2 years, which has brought about this superb realization of John's vision of beauty. But I cannot trust myself. It means too much to me, and I hope you understand. For years, his hopes and ambitions were mine, and in spite of my efforts, the old interests still go on. It is a relief to me to write this. I trust you will not mind. If evenings at the fair were seductive, the nights were ravishing. The lamps that laced every building and walkway produced the most elaborate demonstration of electric illumination ever attempted and the first large-scale test of alternating current. The fair alone consumed 3 times as much electricity as the entire city of Chicago. These were important engineering milestones, but what visitors adored was the sheer beauty of seeing so many lights ignited in one place at one time. Every building, including the manufacturers and liberal arts building, was outlined in white bulbs, giant searchlights, the largest ever made and said to be visible 60 miles away, had been mounted to the manufacturer's roof and swept the grounds and surrounding neighborhoods. Large colored bulbs lit the 100-foot plumes of water that burst from the MacMonnies fountain. For many visitors, these nightly illuminations were their first encounter with electricity. Hilda Sat, a girl newly arrived from Poland, went to the fair with her father. As the light was fading in the sky, millions of lights were suddenly flashed on all at once, she recalled years later. Having seen nothing but kerosene lamps for illumination, this was like getting a sudden vision. Whoa, somebody here? What the It's just better. I shouldn't push when I don't know where the other person is. I should have just kept reading. To be fair, I mean, you know, she walked right past me, did nothing. So I mean, whose fault is it really? You know. Her father told her the lights were activated by electric switches. Without matches, she asked? Between the light and the ever-present blue ghosts of the Colombian Guard, the fair achieved another milestone. For the first time, Chicagoans could stroll at night in perfect safety. This alone began to draw an increased number of visitors, especially young couples locked in the rictus of Victorian courtship and needful of quiet, dark places. At night, the lights and the infilling darkness served to mask the exposition's many flaws. Among them, wrote John Ingalls in Cosmopolitan, the unspeakable debris of innumerable luncheons and to create for a few hours the perfect city of Daniel Burnham's dreams. Knight, Ingalls wrote, is the magician of the fair. Okay, I see what they're doing. I see exactly what they're doing. It's a beautiful night, right? So, I mean, look at pictures of Manhattan at night. I'm assuming that's what they're going for, or that's what they were explaining. It's such a beautiful place to just look at and be around. Something about it. It's like the stars at night have fallen and now they're on Earth, you know. The early visitors returned to their homes and reported to friends and family that the fair, though incomplete, was far grander and more powerful than they had been led to expect. Montgomery Schuyler, the leading architectural critic of Burnham's day, wrote, "It was a common remark amongst visitors who saw the fair for the first time that nothing they had read or seen pictured had given them an idea of it or prepared them for what they saw. Reporters from far-flung cities wired the same observation back to the editors, and stories of delight and awe began to percolate through the most remote towns. In fields, dells, and hollows, families terrified by what they read in the papers each day about the collapsing national economy nonetheless now began to think about Chicago. The trip would be expensive, but it was starting to look more and more worthwhile, even necessary. If only Mr. Ferris could get busy and finish that big wheel." And that is the end of that subchapter. So we are so this fair, it's up and running. It's not perfect, it's not completely done, but the magic of it isn't exactly in what everybody thought it was going to be. It's not just the exposition, it's the experience at night. The night is what brings it up to light. Let's see if we can see see, that's what they're going. Wow. That is magnificent. That is just beautiful. Absolutely glorious. Yeah, you can definitely see the beauty, man. Look at that. The stars are beyond our Earth, and yet it feels like the stars have fallen on Chicago, you know? That's how beautiful it really is. It's fantastic. Okay, just more pictures. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Great drawing. Well, alright, that's the end of this part. Thanks for watching. Until next time, which would be part, who knows, because I forgot what this one was. But thanks for watching. Till next time.